Hi TikTok, this is Miss Regine from Soar Educational Services. I know I haven't made any videos in a long time. I've been very busy with life and things. And I'm in a new office space now, so just a lot of new things going on. But I wanted to make one before maybe TikTok changes. So I have done a lot of research on this. So it's very research heavy, so bear with me as I try to break it down. So this topic is going to be about immigration and the history of immigration in this country. So the U.S. Constitution does say that Congress has the power to make the rules to decide how non-citizens can become naturalized. Congress makes the rule. They decide how long the person has to live in the country, and also if their parent is a citizen, even if they were not born in the country, then they are considered a citizen. And then people whose parents get citizenship and how their parents can apply for them. Like if their parents become naturalized citizens, how they can apply for them to become citizens themselves. So when the country was just in its infancy, the U.S. population was 80.7% white and 19.3% black. That was as of 1790. And immigration was still an issue because we had a lot of immigrants coming from Europe. But that was a primary type of immigration. So in 1790, the Naturalization Act stated that free white people of good moral character who swear allegiance to the Constitution can become citizen after 2 years of living in the U.S. So only white people were considered eligible to be citizen. Then Congress passed the Naturalization Act of 1795, and this increased the requirement for naturalization from 2 years to 5 years and added a clause requiring prospective citizens to declare their intention to naturalize 3 years before doing so. And part of the reason that things might change might be if they start getting a large influx of immigrant, and also there were different things happening. There was sort of a Cold War between the U.S. and France during the French Revolution. So a lot of French people were coming with a lot of new ideas and, as far as democracy, and the United States did not quite want all of those ideas coming into the U.S. So they wanted to slow down immigration some. So that was one of the reasons you had the Naturalization Act of 1795. So John Adams, who was the president at the time, he feared, with the French Revolution and a lot of those new ideas. So it went even further where in 1798, he and Congress passed the Alien and Sedition Act of 1798. And so non-citizens were subjected to arbitrary arrests and deportations at the time. They called them aliens then, so people who were not American citizens. So aliens had to live in the country for 14 years and give 5 years notice before they could become a U.S. citizen. So that's a big change. Whereas, in 1795, it was, okay, if you have to live in the country for 5 years and give a 3 years notice. But now it was like, well, to become a citizen, you have to live in the country for 14 years and you have to give a 5 years notice. So a lot more stringent requirement. Now, Thomas Jefferson became president in 1800, and he repealed this act, the Alien and Sedition Act of 1802. It had a bunch of other stuff too. So it was during the time where there was war going on between England and France, and the United States really wanted to stay out of it and also not get all these conflicting ideas coming in here and being influenced. So that was one of the reasons why the Alien and Sedition Act was passed. But with Thomas Jefferson, it went back to 5 years, where you had to live in the country for 5 years before you could become a U.S. citizen. So the other type of, I guess, what you could say immigration would be, remember I said that there were really two primary groups. We had white, which was about 80%, and blacks, which were 19%. So we had the slave trade in the country, bringing in slaves, and so that's not really immigration, but because of what was also happening with France and Haiti, and not wanting even blacks coming from different areas and bringing new ideas. There was a Haitian Revolution going on in the early 1800s. That actually helped end the slave trade. In 1803, the U.S. banned importation of any person of color. And a big part of it was that they did not want slaves coming from Haiti and other parts of the Caribbean and bringing ideas of revolution. So as you might know, there are some Haitians who fled Haiti during the Haitian Revolution, and they settled in parts of Louisiana, and they would bring ideas of like, revolution and things like that. So again, not wanting to have a mixing of ideas. So that helped in the Haitian Revolution. And the help in the slave trade. The slave trade officially ended in 1808. Okay, and in the early days of America, there were still pretty much two political parties. So you had the Democratic Republican led by James Madison, and he also passed some new rules. So non-citizens possess all rights under the Constitution. So that was one of the things that he promoted, that non-citizens would possess all right under the Constitution. And during his presidency, Congress also declared deportation by presidential decree violated the 5th and 6th Amendment. So one of the things I saw in my research was things really did go back and forth. There was a bunch of flip-flop. A lot of it did depend on who was in the executive branch at the time and what their agenda was pushing, and also what was going on internationally in the whole world. So James Madison, he was more pro-immigration, said that immigrants would possess all the rights of non-citizens of the Constitution. So, all 10 Amendment, Bill of Rights, those get applied to non-citizens too. And you can't just deport them by presidential decree. That would be a violation of the 5th and 6th Amendment. But then sometimes things change. So in 1819, we had an economic depression, and that tempered the pro-immigration sentiment. And again, still in those days, immigration was still primarily from people from Germany, Ireland, and the UK. But there were definitely ideas where I've read, if you read Cass, I can't remember the author, but even in that book where people were saying, can these German immigrants really integrate into our society? And, can these Irish immigrants integrate into our society? Oh, but they are not white. They are coming from low moral characters. So even though they were Europeans, but because they were from a different background, they were not Anglos, there was still a lot of that happening, especially during times of economic uncertainty. So the U.S. always had a strand of nativism. It's not new. So, for example, in the 1850s, the American Party, known as the Know Nothing, wanted to increase residency period to 21 years. So, way past even what the Alien and Sedition from John Adams. All right, so, but America, when things were better, America was a growing country. There was more of a positive reception of immigration. So, for example, Abraham Lincoln passed the Act to Encourage Immigration of 1864, which allowed private employers to recruit foreign workers, pay their transportation and costs, and for contractual labors. Under Lincoln, the Burlingame Swords Treaty ensured Chinese citizens had a right to immigrate to the U.S. And also, this is after Lincoln passed away, but the Naturalization Act of 1870 granted naturalization rights to aliens being free white person and to aliens of African nativity. And the reason that was important was because by 1870, the black slaves are freed, so they were also granted citizenship. So, but again, only two types of people were eligible to be citizens: whites and people of African ancestry. So that means Asians, Hispanic, and American Indians were excluded. Now, I just said that Lincoln passed the Burlingame Sword Treaty, which ensures Chinese citizens had a right to immigrate to the U.S. Well, that's not going to last, but I will have to tell you more about it in my next video. All right, bye.